He ngā kahiko o te Nehenehenui, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Welcome to another engaging Te Puna Kōrero o te Nehenehenui, te whānau. Glad to have you guys on board this evening. I'm your host, Leon Hemera, and I hope you guys are nice and warm wherever you're tuned in from this evening on our MFM platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube. Well, whānau, last week we had the utmost privilege to take you guys on a journey, a stroll for some of you back down memory lane, and for some of you as well, as long as me, a glimpse at the first ever look of the documentary Te Kūititanga, the Narrowy, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about this evening at Te Whānau. We're going to hopefully relive some of that magic and talk to some of our whānau and descendants from some of the people that featured in the documentary, and also how we came about to watch that documentary. So I'm happy and privileged to welcome our guests for this evening, Tania Simpson, Paul Meredith, Shannon Manawaiti, and Whaia Annabelle Ward. Tēnā tātou e te whānau. Kia ora, kia ora. How are you all this evening?
Kia ora.
Ka pai.
Kia ora.
Ka pai. Thank you all for joining us and sharing some of your kōrero with us all tonight, and everybody tuned in as well. Really, really looking forward to it. But for some of our whānau at home, what I'd like to do is for us to go around the screen and just ko wai koe, and actually where are you zooming in from tonight? Where you're flying in from tonight? So if we could start from this side, we'll start with you, Paul, and then we'll carry on around the screens. Hea koe te wā.
No, kia ora tātou. Paul Meredith tōku ingoa. Tōku pāpā no he Meredith no Kīki, tōku māma no Kīki anō tō te rā he amohanga nikora no nā tika putui. Kai o take hau i tēnei wa. Ka tae no ka hoki mai ki te kainga mai te mahi. Taku mahi kai nā taonga Sound of Vision, koe te pauarahi. Nā reira mihi atu nei kia tātou.
I te rangatira. Tēnā koe. Tēnā koe, Paul. Thank you for joining us this evening. And next we've got Tania. Tēnā koe, Tania.
Tēnā koe, Leon, o tira kia tātou katoa, e mātaki mai nei, mihi ana kia tātou katoa. Ko Tania Simpson, tōku ingoa, tuku ake a hau I te kuiti. Tōku whaia ko Maxine Rai Davis, no Otorohanga ia, heke mai ana tātai whakapapa no te waka o Tainui. Me tōku papa Murray Simpson, tuku ake I hangatiki, noho ia ki te kuiti hoki. Kei Mātangi a hau nāianei, I'm at Mātangi, zooming in from home, which is just out of Hamilton, between Hamilton and Cambridge. Kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koe, Tania. Nice to have you on board this evening. And Whaia Annabelle, tēnā koe Whaia, kia koe te wā.
Tēnā tātou katoa, ngā mihi ki a koutou I whakarite te hui o te pōnei, ko Annabelle Ward tōku ingoa, no te tai rāwhiti, no whānau apanui, tōku papa, ko te pua, tōku papa, no kanei tōku whaia, no reira e urio o Maniapoto o Ngāti Rora. Ko taku mahi he kaiako au, e tumai ki tuarua kei te kura rautau. No reira, kia ora rawatu.
Kia ora, tēnā koe Whaia. Shout outs to all our students from Te Kura Rautau tuning in this evening as well. E mihi ana kia koutou katoa. And finally, Shannon is not a stranger for our Puna Kōrero te Nehenehenui, and we're lucky to have him back again. Kia koe te wā, Shan.
Kia ora tātou. Ko Shannon Tareki Mangu Manawaiti tōku ingoa. Ko Ngāi te hapu, Ngāti Waiora te hapu, ko te kuiti pā te marae. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe. Tēnā koe, Kazi. Thank you for joining us this evening. Awesome to have everybody on board, and I think everybody is looking forward to all the kōrero that we're about to have on this Puna Kōrero this evening. Just a reminder to our whānau, there will be a time where you guys can ask your pātai to our panelists this evening. So if you want to start putting pātai in the comment section, kia kaha koutou. I know you have all been asking pātai throughout the week since this time last week. So, ko tēnei te wā, get those pātai in, and we should get some answers for you. But I'd like to start our kōrero, actually how we all came about to watch this. And I'll start with you, please, Paul, if I could. Ko te pātai, you played a huge part. You played a huge role in this documentary. Can you let our whānau know out there exactly what your mahi is at Ngā Taonga Sound and Vision, and also how we were able to see the documentary publicly?
Kia ora. Yes, I work at Ngā Taonga Sound and Vision, the Deputy CEO Māori. Been there for 2 years, and when I first got there, the first thing I did was start searching through catalogue and databases for Maniapoto Taonga, and came across this documentary, Te Kūititanga. I actually had heard about it because I know that a lot of the interviews for this documentary in the Turnbull Library, but I hadn't seen the documentary, so I ordered it up, and of course we only had it on tape at that time. It hadn't been digitised, so I had to. It was a trip down memory lane, and like we got VCRs at work. And then I rang up one of our relations, Peter Anderson, and when Peter Anderson down there, he came up and he watched it, and I just watched him watching it. It was all a trip down memory lane. He was naming everybody in the documentary. It was great. And so I mean, I sort of had this idea of iwi watch parties, particularly with COVID lockdown. We've got all these taonga at Ngā Taonga. And I don't know if you know what Ngā Taonga Sound and Vision, we're a charitable trust. We're funded by government, but we're the sort of the archive for sound, radio, and TVNZ and film. And so we have this massive amount of taonga, a collection of mātauranga, and quite a bit of Maniapoto taonga there. And we're really committed. We want to get it back to iwi. We actually don't own any of it. We just look after it. So we talk about ourselves as the kaipapuri. But the other people that own it, TVNZ, have the copyright. So we've got to work with them. But we're all sort of committed to getting making this accessible for iwi. And so I sort of had this idea, of iwi watch parties and using that like radio station, iwi radio stations. I thought I'll try it first with Maniapoto FM. If it goes wrong, at least and you can't get in trouble from your own. But so it was just this idea that making how we can make it more accessible and getting the right platform. But that required us clearing all the rights and with TVNZ and also Archives New Zealand, because it was actually produced by the National Film Unit. So Archives New Zealand hold the rights around there. But so it was just an idea, and always been a bit of a fan of Maniapoto FM and the work that you do. And so and it was hard because everyone sort of come to Ngā Taonga. I'd say, oh, come on, watch this. And so I had a few people already had watched it, but I was keen to get it digitized, and by making this stuff digitized, it makes it much easier, to use platforms like this. We only have about 1% of our taonga that we hold is digitized. We're just going for a massive digitization program at the moment, because I don't know if you watch people that have VHS tapes and audio tapes, they only have a short lifespan. We think by 2025 you're in trouble because there's not enough VCRs, technicians to fix them, VCRs to play them. And by 2030, you pretty much had it. So we are going for a massive digitization program to digitize those taonga that we hold, so that they are preserved for future generations. And so it was really important to get this particular documentary for me anyway, to encourage it to be digitized, because everyone's sort of putting up taonga, saying, oh, and I saw when I went up there, I saw one thing being digitized was Sale of the Century, because some father had won a car. I said, well, no, that's good for their whānau, but digitise this for me and it will impact the community. And we saw that last week. So it was great to watch that last week and watch all the comments. It was really heartwarming. Yeah, then I saw Tanya at the airport, and I said, hey, Tanya, did you watch that documentary? And she said, oh, I was on the bus. I said, oh, karawhi.
Yeah, we really got a huge response from our whānau out there from the viewing while we were viewing it, and also all the way through the week. So yeah, it was definitely, thank you for choosing us to be the first Paul for this new venture. But yeah, we'll be definitely looking forward to some more. But we'll talk about that after. We'll talk about a little bit more about that after. If I could come to you, Fire Annabelle, and how, man, we saw so many of our kōrero and kuia, but for you, how was it to see your parents, Mataoti Whaitika, featured in the documentary, and how did it make you feel when you saw your parents? Did it bring back some memories for you, Fire?
Yes, so tuki te mihi ki a koe, Paul, such a taonga. Our family, like yours, Tania, we had the videotape, and we watched it as a whānau after Dad passed away, and it was quite staticky, so not very clear. And we were all blessed. We were watching it from all around the country, and we've got lots of family over in Australia, and they were watching it, and our hearts, it just took our heart watching our parents come on, but not only them, all of their friends and the people that we knew and we grew up with. I was actually commenting as I was watching, but I made a big boo-boo. I wrote Uncle Bully on there, and then the standards, or whoever they are, they shut me down. I couldn't write anything else in the comments. So, they said something about the bullying standards, but as soon as I saw their faces, all, right through the first showing, and I had to watch it about 3 times before I could capture what they were saying. Because all through it, I was just going, oh, there's Uncle Bully, there's Auntie Mary walking through the street, and look at Uncle Puss, we're having a big giggle. There he was with this big bushy beard, and we just went whānau after whānau. To hear your grandparents, Shannon, it was just beautiful. And to see Uncle Bob, because I guess what I wanted to say too, we've got lots of photos, but to hear their voices, it was just out of this world. And Mum's voice came on before she did, and at first I didn't recognise it, and I said, is that Mum? Could that be Mum? And then she came on. And in our family, she's been quite an icon for the way she dressed. And all of the mokopuna were saying, yes, that's our Nana, look how she dressed just to hang the washing up. They said, what a stylish lady. I remember the cat in the house. And I remember at the time they made the documentary, the makers said that they don't usually make films with animals in because they're so unpredictable. But our cat was so placid that they were happy to keep the cat in. And I had a little bit of a kōrero with my baby brother, because that's my baby brother in there. He would have been about 9. And I had probably just moved out. So I would say it was 1980 by the time they had that in, because I had left high school and had my first child. But there's my little brother in there. His name's Adrian. At school he was called Reese. And my sister Kamaya, she was sitting in the rows at the high school, and on the bus, probably with you, Tania, you might remember her, the mischief one. And I just was enthralled when I heard your nan's voice, Shannon. It just sounded like velvet. And I remember her because she started one of the first kohanga reo and started it at Aokura in the junior block. I remember so many of those people. Uncle Bob was precious to me because Dad came in from the East Coast and he'd been teaching here. He said he wasn't here very long, and Uncle Bob took him under his wing, because he's my grandmother's sister's husband, and he was one of the what we would call one of our chiefs, one of our rangatira around here. But he took Dad under his wing and he nurtured him, and Dad always had the reo, always believed in the reo. He never taught us because they were so colonised, you know, and like even Mum, they were brought up, even though her parents could Kōrero Māori, Māori was not the way to go. You had to latch on to the European culture to be successful in the world. But I just looked at them and I thought, what groundbreakers, what beautiful people. And it made me think of the kawinata, you know. So lots of joy seeing that video, you know, seeing our house, our home, and, you know, able to see Mum and Dad. They would have been 39 and 40 at that time. Yeah, and I remember even going to kura, that a lot of our friends, their parents were a lot older than my parents. And when I looked at them, they looked like the young bucks in that rōpū. So I thought they were real groundbreakers, trendsetters, and they had great moia, great dreams for all our hapu, all our iwi. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that opportunity, MFM. Thank you, Paul. Lots of love from our family.
Kia ora, tēnā whai. Yeah, I must agree with you. Mato Oti, yeah, definitely young and handsome, as he was anyway. It was beautiful. It was beautiful to see them up there, and the cats as well. Which he did a good job lying in front of the TV. Ka pai. Tanya, if I could come to you. Now we spoke about you being young back then, of course, a young early teenager, possibly, and you in the school bus scene. Could you take us back and let us know what your memories are of that time of the filming of the documentary?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty. I don't know how they selected who was going to be on the school bus, because we were not bus kids. I just walked down the road to school, so they just came and told us we were picked to go and be on the bus, and I think they wanted a selection of ages, and they wanted a mix of Māori and Pākehā on the bus, and so they just selected a number of kids, and you would have recognised Kruger was probably a couple of rows in front of me, and there's lots of familiar faces of our mates from that time. But me and a couple of my classmates were pulled out and put on the bus, and we spent a good part of the day, maybe half the day, at Awakino Hill on the bus, and there were no cell phones or anything, so that the camera guy was down the bottom of the hill, and the bus would drive right up the top where the picnic area is, or a bit further up, and we would wait and sort of all get ready, and then when they decided it was time, down we went, and we all had to just chit chat and have a good time, which was really easy to do, and hope that the cameraman at the bottom got the shot, and which they needed to do many times, so we would turn around and go back up and do it all again, and so it was great fun actually for us. And I think I was about 13 or 14 at the time, and I was near the back of the bus, so you sort of get a glimpse of the side of my head, but I'm there with a couple of mates, and then they filmed in the bus, so we didn't know much about what was going on. We just knew it was a bit of time off school and a bit of fun going up and down the hill. And when I saw the disco, I was trying to recall whether that was one of the discos that I was at up at the Palm, but it looked very familiar. But then there were a few of those discos at the Palm, so it could have been any night really. But they were great. They were great fun. The music of that era was fantastic, and going up there for kanikani was good fun. It was good fun. So that was about it. I just had a very tiny little part in that, but it was awesome to see all of those familiar faces, and I think everybody's hearts melted a little bit just being able to see them again and listen to them, particularly when we hadn't seen that for such a long time, and it really did feel like it was completely new, actually, watching them and listening to what they were worried about at that time and what was on their minds and what they were dealing with and what they hoped for the future. And so, yeah, it was a very heartwarming experience to be able to see it.
Yeah, beautiful. Some beautiful memories there. Thank you for taking us back there and having a bit of a glimpse and just talking on the disco days. I don't think much has changed really because I'm a DJ myself, and I hear the old Golden Harvest being requested every now and again as well. So it was actually good to hear and see that on the doco. So yeah, that was choice. Shannon, cousin Shan, bro, as we know, you it was very nice to see your koro on the screen, and I must say your splitting resemblance of your koro and also hold the same mana as he did as well, cousin. So what was it like for you to see your korowa on the documentary?
Yeah, firstly, just want to tautoko all the kōrero that's been shared so far, and also, importantly, most like to thank Paul for bringing this taonga, like what's been said, a taonga out into the light, so that our people can actually watch it. Yeah, for me, I had seen the documentary previously, but seeing my grandparents and all the other whānau on there that were of that era, I suppose, I'm pretty sure it would have brought a tear to a lot of people's eyes, especially seeing those that are actually no longer here with us. And for me, being brought up with my grand around the other people that in that documentary, it's just like stepping back in time, really. All of those people that featured in that documentary were all heavily involved in the marae and the community. And for me to actually have been around those people when I was young, it's I was extremely lucky, I think, to have role models and people like that to look up to. Especially today when I'm actually assumed some of those roles that my grandparents and the rest have had done in their time. I'm a trustee mother today, so I'm sure that I'd be proud that I'm involving myself in the marae as much as I can today. So yeah, just really quite emotional seeing some of those people there because they really did have a big effect on my life, younger life. Growing up, I sort of have a memory of all those people that I'll cherish for the future. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Shane. And just talking about your koro, bro. Do you recall the times that you shared with him growing up?
Yeah, it's actually my grandfather's driving in that documentary. I actually remember going on rides with him on that truck because he worked at the goods shed, which is actually not far from the marae. The goods shed is actually still there. That's that big shed down there by the skate park. So he worked there, and whenever there was anything on up at the marae, Papa was usually the first one up there. To get the back in those days, we had a boiler, and it used to run on diesel, and you had to actually fire that up to get hot water for the kitchen and well, hot water in general. So one of the first tasks that had to be done was you had to fire that boiler up to get hot water. And they used to have a steamer there that they used to use to cook all the kai in the old dining room. So, yeah, a lot of memories from that time when I was a kid. Yeah, just a whole lot of stuff comes back when I think about those days.
Kia ora, Shane. Thank you for
Yeah,
that, bro.
totally.
Rawe. If I could come back to you, Paul, and just talking about these taonga, how important do you think it is for iwi like us here in Ngāti Maniapoto to be able to witness this archive footage as we did last week?
Oh, I think it's hugely important. Just listening to Annabelle and Tanya and Shannon, it's a privilege to be able to support this work, and a lot of our staff, it's more of a passion than anything, and we know it's important to care for it, but we know we don't just want it sitting on the shelves. We want to make sure that it's that we have access and it's appropriate access. So we've got to recognise the copyright holder and deal with them, the depositor, but we also recognise kaitiaki, and so a lot of time. Well, generally speaking, is when we have requests for third-party access, we try and identify the whānau and go back to them and ask them if they are happy for it to be shown, for it to be used by other filmmakers, etc. So there's that level of control. And in cases where they said no, so we won't release it. So it's not just about access; it's about appropriate access and making sure that whānau hapu we have some say over the use of these taonga. But we just saw last week, how I think it's good for the well-being, and just to be able to go on these trips down memory lane. We saw it last week. We see all the time with a lot of the iwi that we deal with. I had whakatohia come down last year, and they were talking about a wānanga they were having at this marae the following weekend, and they were after the wakahuia program from that marae. So we said, we've got that. And then we also said, we've also got 10 hours of unedited footage. So we started showing them. And they were literally sort of jumped in front of sitting on the floor in front of the TV, and they were laughing and they were crying. And, so we see all these emotions, and it's just a real privilege to be part of it. And so making sure that this is accessible was really important for us.
Beautiful, beautiful. Ka whai. If I could come to you, Whai Annabelle, as we saw, your dad, Mataoti, was in education. Did that inspire you to be a professional in education as well, Whai?
Definitely. And my mum worked in education as well. She helped out at Aokura, and she worked with children with hearing loss. But mum trained that's how mum and dad met. They went to training college together. But yeah, Dad has a long legacy of teaching, but we went all over the place. And I used to say to Dad, how come, I think I went to 7 kura. I said, how come we moved all the time? And he said that back in those days, to get promoted, you could be sent anywhere. So yeah, I think I started school down Fielding Way. Then I remember going to school up north. I think my brothers went to school over the east coast, up north, Mātira, on the other side of Ngarawahia. Went to Wanganui, went to a kura in Otorohanga for a little while, and then back to CP. I think I was 10 when I got to CP. And yeah, they were my role models, the teachers. I think back then when I was at high school, I used to think I can be a teacher or a minister or a doctor, because that was Dari Te Whare, my dad, and Dr. Mickey Thompson. They were my idols back then. And I ended up going along the teaching path. and I'm really proud to follow in their footsteps. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, it does definitely. Thank you, Flyer. Since we're talking about education, in the documentary, there was criticism made towards the education system. You're in education yourself. Do you feel as though times have changed since then?
I would say it has changed a lot for the better, but we've still got a long way to go. A couple of years ago, all of our kura, we had a teacher only day, and our main speaker was Anne Milne, who spoke about colouring in the white spaces. And so she's European, she's grown up and didn't even realise but that she had a privileged upbringing, because to her it was just normal. And then she's had Māori e Mokopuna, and she's written her book, and it says that these children, when they come into your kura, can they see their culture reflected and appreciated and valued in the environment, in every room they walk in, but she said as soon as they walk in the gate, can they feel that they belong there? And, I actually shuddered when I saw the clip of all the teachers walking through Te Kuiti High School, because, it brought up a lot of memories. And I think a lot of it was about not belonging, not having a sense of belonging. And I know that I was one of the luckier children. We had a lot of support at home. But I think at that time I was so colonised that when we were treated badly, I didn't even know it until, as an adult, I felt like I was woke.
Yeah.
And I know there's been a lot of shifts. I went to Vanuatu about 3 years ago, and I was fortunate to be with a big bunch of teachers, because my niece is a teacher and she got married, and so there's a huge lot of teachers. And they were asking, we went to this tourist thing, Captain Tama's tours, and they were asking questions, what's the Māori word for this, what's the Māori word for that? I didn't get a look in, and all these kaiako were Pākehā, and they knew the answers to all these Māori kupu. I know there are lots and lots of kaiako out there that are trying really hard to support the reo, to support the tamariki and helping them learn about their culture, but they just sometimes haven't got the support or the tools. But I'm so proud of the kohanga reo movement and the kura kaupapa, the hakumanga rūmaki that are out there. And I actually I've been to quite a few tangi, and I know that I work alongside Whaiahere, and I've told her this. We've gone onto this marae, and the children that she's taught, or the children that I've shared with teaching those children, they're on the paipai. We're getting the karanga from a student that either went to our kura or to the wharekura, and our tama, they're tama, but they're men,
Yeah.
They're standing on the paipai, they're doing the whai kōrero, and it's amazing, and it's it gives us a huge sense of pride.
Yeah.
And
A good
like
sense of
even the media,
yeah.
All over the media, there's the reo is being spoken, the reo's being heard and normalised. So we've come a long way. It's taken a long time. We've still got a lot of mahi to do.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Kia ora, Whaia. Thank you for that. Tika tō kōrero. Ai, tika tō kōrero. Tania, if we could come to you, since we're still talking about education, if we've referred to the kōrero made by some of our kaumātua about education and the teachers turning a blind eye to Māori students. Is this something that you experienced yourself personally?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had people like we had oti come into school when I was at Pukenui school. In fact, when we started school at Pukenui, our Pākehā new entrance teacher, would teach us te reo, what she could. But other than small bits like that, it was largely absent until Oti came to school and started teaching us, once a week, reo lessons, and then he would round us up and take us up to Te Tokunga Nui Anoho and get someone like Uncle Bob to explain the carvings and kōwhaiwhai and tukutuku to us. And so we were absorbing mātauranga that way through them. And all of those people in the documentary, they were the ones laying the foundations. It wasn't really in our school so much. At high school, there weren't many Māori teachers at that time. There was Mr. Hutu and Mr. Biggs. There was a Māori class that Mr. Hutu used to take, but not everyone could take it, because it was one of those option subjects. So you didn't necessarily have the ability to enroll if you wanted to take another course at the same time. So was there racism, or were they turning a blind eye to Māori? I think yes. I think there were a lot of Māori students who suffered from not being taught in a way that worked for them. And I think there was probably more than that. The expectations of a lot of our Māori students by the school were quite low. So in many cases, we were pushing through those kinds of barriers, and some were able to push through and get over them, and others, were the barriers were daunting. So yeah, there was a lot to do, but at the same time, Auntie Peti Waia was sowing the seeds. She was setting up ātārangi as we were coming out of high school. She was involved in ātārangi, and that was a phenomenon. And we used to see her when we were up in Hamilton, see her and her team who were, fostering te reo and taking te reo to wide great numbers of audiences, and they would come home to Te Kuiti and take classes as well. So they were making it happen. They were having wānanga up at Te Tokunga Nui Anoho, Auntie Peti Waia and Pumi Taituha, where they would teach us karanga and waiata. So they were doing all that in spite of the education system, not necessarily with the support of, although I imagine, the support that they did get was because of their own struggle to make it happen. But what we see now in terms of the changes that have occurred is largely as a result of their efforts, the foundations that they were putting down at that time, and motivated by the kinds of kōrero that they were giving during that documentary, their own concern about the future of our tikanga and reo. So, they would be, I think, pleased to see what has happened, even though we know it's not or think it's still not enough. And certainly the education system's got a long way to go. And our students deserve much more than they get in the mainstream system. Nevertheless, there's been some incredible progress made.
Kia ora, Tania. Tika tau tō kōrero hoki. Ai, kia ora. If I could come to you, Shen. Now, your kōrero spoke of feeling a sense of whakamā, not being able to stand and speak te reo Māori. Despite knowing the ins and outs of the marae and tikanga, is this something that you think that Aori and our whānau still feel today?
Well, I can use myself as an example of that, really. So I think I recall my grandfather saying that he knew all the rights and that on the marae, and I'm in the same position as him. He also says that he had lack of confidence in himself to speak the reo. I wouldn't necessarily say I lack confidence in that. It's probably more of a determination to learn our reo is probably where it lies with me. I really need to just motivate myself to learn our reo. And likewise with a lot of people that are of the same generation as me, we weren't a lot of us weren't taught that in primary school and into high school. So we sort of the generation that missed out on learning the reo, I suppose. Although there has been opportunities in adulthood to actually learn the reo with the advent of the wānanga and other places that have made it available to learn our language. So I think the key really is for me and others in a similar position is applying ourselves to actually learn our reo. Man in my position should really be able to speak our language, especially with some of the roles I play up on the marae. And I think my grandfather and my other grandfather, my mother's father, told me a story about when they were growing up and they weren't allowed to speak Māori at school, and you'd get strapped and all that kind of thing. So he was the same. My grandfather Eddie was of the same generation where they weren't actually brought up to speak the reo, and I suppose in a way they probably maybe their parents didn't think that it was actually valuable for them to learn the language. Perhaps I'm not entirely sure about that, but nevertheless they never learned. Both my grandfather's father and my father both couldn't speak the reo, but their parents spoke. They were fluent speakers. So, and also my grandmother was a fluent speaker. She was taught to speak te reo Māori first before she learned how to speak English. So, but funnily enough, none of their children, as in his brothers and sisters, weren't actually taught by other to speak the reo. So I think there's a little bit of a bit of history repeating itself there. So I think probably for my generation, it's just I think we need to encourage one another to actually take that step and learn how to speak our language. Kia ora, Kath.
Kia ora. Kia ora, cousin Shane. Wise words, bro. Tēnā koe. Tēnā koe. Paul, if I could come back to you, and if you could let us know, let our whānau know, if you could talk us through how precious footage like this one is cared for at your mahi, at Ngā Taonga Sound and Vision.
Yeah, I mean, we have several vaults around Wellington, and they're all temperature controlled. And so it's can be quite a bit of an expensive operation. Now, a number of iwi have talked about setting up these archival repositories, but they can be expensive. So yes, we have these various vaults, and some are better than others. But like when we say, for example, just getting that digitized, we work on the premise you got one shot because they'll go and check it. They'll check it for mold. If it's got mold on it, then it goes through a process where they clean it and they actually bake it, and then it's a whole technical process. So it's not just we just go and grab the tape and then put it in the machine. So they'll go through and they'll check all that. Then they work on the premise. They got one shot to do it properly. So and sometimes we have this bit of debate at work. They say, they don't want to release it out into the wide world unless it's like completely properly preserved to the to the highest degree. And sometimes we just have these other what we call legacy copies, just sort of not half pie, but they're not the most perfect copies. But I'm saying, that'll do. But in this case, we had a proper it was properly preserved. So yeah, there is a bit of a process that we go through, and we have a lot of technical equipment, and we're always on the lookout for VCRs. We at the moment we got some funding from government we built bespoke digitization kits, and we're distributing them to various iwi around the country so that they can work within their own communities to preserve those VCR tapes and audio tapes that are in people's cupboards and in their drawers. So there's one of our kōrero was from back home. I was talking with him. He goes, I've got boxes in my drawer. I've been recording the old people since the 1970s. So those sort of taonga, it's really important that they are digitized. So we're actually providing these kits, and we actually say that we're not after copies. It's just really about the communities preserving it themselves and looking after it. We've actually probably got a backlog of about 135 years of work that we've got to get through the material the taonga that we hold. But it's really important that we retain these taonga, because they just, as we saw last week, it's just giving trips down memory lane. I was watching Romper Room this morning. We did very well with one of our staff. She was on Romper Room in 1978, so we dug up some footage of Romper Room. Shannon won't remember Romper Room, but Tanya will, and Anna will, back in the day. But yeah, so and there's other maniapoto taonga there, and we're keen to carry on this mahi, and also work with other iwi too, and share these taonga through platforms like iwi radio, which I think are well positioned.
Yeah, kapai. Paul, a question from me. It's just from an average Joe like myself. I've got videotapes here in my whare of even my own 21st that I want to have a look at, but I've got no VCR player. How can we look after them until we can get them to to somewhere where they get digital? Like, is there something we can do? You talked about how you have airtight vaults. Like, can we put them in Glad bags or something to keep them?
Yeah.
For them?
I'm not the most expert on this, but I know that they got a 20-year VCR tape's got a 20-year lifespan. It's if you got it in the right sort of temperature, sort of in a dark, sort of cooler area, it should be able to last for 40 years.
Wow.
But yeah, so there are professional outfits that will digitize for you, and then if you and there are kits that we'll be doing. Hopefully by the end of our program, we'll have distributed 50 kits around the country. And there's one coming to Maniapoto. And we're providing training and all that. We've been sending a couple to the Cook Islands because of our relations over in the Cook Islands. Yeah, so. But yeah, it's really important, if you have got these particularly, we did some work with Ngāti Tō, was one of our first ones, and we had this kuia there. She brought in 3 tapes. The first tape was a journey down to Parihaka, from Parihaka down to Dunedin. But because it was real time digitization, so it was like a 3-hour tape. How long was it? We were like, how long was this journey? So we were sitting there and watching it. Then the second tape had mold on it, so we couldn't put it through. It has to be professionally cleaned. And we got some ideas about that. And then the third tape she put in, she goes, I think this is a really important hui. And we put it in, it was Young and the Restless. So I was like, we'll pass on that one. But we know there's like so much, our old manuscripts and all that. We know that the media sort of format of the late sort of 20th century was the video tapes and the audio tapes, and it's really important. So we have a lot of audio tapes. I was listening to the old fella Tui speaking. It was a lovely Kōrero. I was watching some unedited footage. There was a Waiora program done in 87 on Rangi Maari Hita. So I was watching some of all the unedited footage. Such a beautiful woman, just listening to her, so yeah. And there's a Kaumātua ball from 1985, a koha program. And we were going on to Mōkai Kāinga, and I said to Rovina, I said, "Hey, Rovina, you want to see yourself with black hair?" And her and Tifu were watching that before our pōwhiri. So, and that's a beautiful taonga, and that's probably something that we want to share with the whānau too. So we just have to have some discussions with TVNZ. But TVNZ have been great. They're really supportive of this idea. Navak Rogers, really supportive.
Oh, boy. Well, we'll be looking forward to some more taonga coming out once we get those conversations going. Massive. Well, our whānau have been tuning in from home on our Facebook, and I think it's time for us to have a look to see if we have a pātai in the box. Ka pai, first pātai. Tēnā koe Māori, Māori's pātai is Kia ora Tania, just touching on that kōrero about our whānau and what they thought and had concerns about back then. Do you feel we have made some progression from back then to now in terms of reo Māori or the whakaaro of colonisation? Pai tēnā pātai Māori. Kia koe Tania.
Kia ora Māori. Look, I think we've made progress in terms of te reo, because they were talking then about the possibility of having to allow whai kōrero in English. That we might get to that stage where we were going to have to let our tikanga and our formal protocols be undertaken in English because there wouldn't be the speakers. So I think that was kind of what they were concerned about, and we can see now that actually we have many speakers of te reo. We have kohanga kura and whare kura, we have wānanga, we have kapahaka, we have all kinds of things going that are helping to grow and perpetuate our reo, not just amongst ourselves, but amongst tauiwi as well. So lots of Pākehā now learning our reo. We see it in the TV, and we're getting it reflected back at us, and it's coming into normal mainstream life. And reo and tikanga, don't exist separately; they exist together. And mātauranga, all of those parts of our history and our knowledge, they all come together. So as people learn our reo, they learn about us, and they learn about our histories, and they learn about our tikanga. And we've got Matariki holiday coming up. And everybody's all about wanting to know about Matariki, and it's fantastic, and so that is a massive, I think, step forward from what they were worrying about. And in terms, and that is a process of decolonisation, and it's never fast enough. There's still horrific racism issues in front of us. But we have to, I think, accept that we are making progress. So, they laid foundations for us, and we all continue to do what we can to lay foundations for the future. And their optimism, they were concerned then. I think we can be more optimistic now about our mokopuna's future than they were at that time for our future. But I think they're the example of what can happen. They committed themselves in all kinds of ways for us, and look what's happened. And so even though we may be, making small strides, it can grow into big things in the future. So the thing I take from them, though, is looking back at them, was the ngākau ngāwari. They were really gentle people, really, and they gave very generously of themselves, and they weren't rigid about who can do what or how things had to be. Auntie Betty was very accepting of, just have a go at speaking te reo, and it's okay if you get it all wrong. And just, they were never kind of that hard about things. And that's what I took from it, I thought maybe we need to remember not to be so rigid and hard about things, and to be flexible and allow people to have a go at things, and it's okay. It's part of the learning journey to make mistakes along the way.
Kia ora, tēnā koe, Tania. Thank you for that part-time, Māori. I hope you did, that answered your question. Mihi ana kia koe te tuahine. Kapai, if I could come back to you, via Annabelle. Your mum and dad shared some kōrero words of wisdom on the documentary. Do their words still resonate with you to this day?
I think one thing my mum always said was nobody touches her kids. So yeah, back in those days, you got to put it into context that they had teachers going through kids here, whether it was with their hands or with a ruler, looking for aliens. You had teachers at the high school flicking your skirts up to make sure you had the right coloured undies on, and you had teachers whacking children because, it was legal back then. But no, our mum was a tiger mama, and nobody touched her kids, and I'm pretty sure that's carried on to all of my generation. That I shared some of the video with my children in my class, and they remarked on, look at him fire, he's writing on a blackboard, and what's he using? Is that chalk? And we're going, yep. And they said, look, he's writing Māori on there, on the board. And because I'd preempted the video to say that there wasn't a lot of real spoken back there, and they said, yeah, there can't have been fire because all of those people said Maori instead of Māori. And yeah, I think I'm pretty sure back then a lot of the belief was that through education you could probably find your way into out of poverty, maybe into better work. I know that they had a strong work ethic. I know that they, like Tania said, they gave a lot of themselves, just like all the other people who are on that video. They worked together. All of those people were my aunties and uncles. We possibly should have had Uncle Puni Bell on here, because he's probably one of the few people who were in the adult group who's still alive. And it's lovely to see him working alongside you, Shannon, up at the marae. And when I was asked to come on here, I was a bit reluctant because it was such an emotional journey watching all of our, they were whānau, they were our parents' best friends. But when I heard Shannon was on here, I said, yeah, I can do it. Because I know Shannon was one of my dad's pets. Dad worked up at Te Tokanganui all those years. He had a lot of people criticise him, saying, who are you to be on there? You're just Ngāti Plo. Throughout his service at the marae, but I always knew of the story that anyone criticised my dad, Uncle Bob would take them into the wharenui and show them mahinarangi, and say, leave my dad alone. So to see Uncle Bob on there, it just really made me so proud And so, and then Shannon, for years, you know, I lived away from here, but Dad always spoke of you, Shannon. And in a way, I kind of looked at how Uncle Bob nurtured my dad into the marae, that my dad might have nurtured you along to come up to the marae. And as you know, along with your whānau, your parents, your grandparents, you know, I know that aroha, you know, has just carried on and continued, and I'm sure it will last a long time. Yeah, lots of things resonate from our parents. You know, you ask any of, there's 7 tamariki in our whānau, and we've got, you know, there's all the mokopuna who remember the words of our parents. So to hear their voices while they were young, you know, lots of our memories are of them in their declining years, but to see them when they're young and vibrant and hear their voices, such a, you know, priceless, truly priceless. And I know that all of my whānau, when I said to them, oh, I'm going to be on the show, and, you know, oh, what did you think of this show? And they were saying, how can we get a copy? How can we get a copy? So I'll just leave it with that question. And a huge, huge mihi to you, Shannon. You know, you're carrying the load. You're just like them, selfless, and doing the mahi. So nui te mihi ki a koe, nui te aroa.
Kia ora whae, Annabelle. Kia ora, tīnā koe. And you actually alluded to my next question. And as we're coming to the end, closely to the end of our webinar, I'll have a pātai for Paul. And the pātai is Paul, because there was a lot of our whānau that actually missed the screening last week, and they've all been asking when they can view it again. Is this possible? And will we see more of Ngāti Maniapoto archive footage?
Yeah, and this question was coming. I've been monitoring the Facebook, so I've got our staff working on this. I'll be talking with TVNZ and Archives New Zealand, but yeah, we'll make something happen, and definitely, like in terms of a repeat viewing, but also how we can get copies. So just gotta have some internal conversations and then conversations with the copyright holders. But yeah, definitely keen. When it's funny when we have Māori request stuff, the staff come up and they say, "Oh no, do we charge them?" I say, "Oh no, they're kaitiaki. We don't charge kaitiaki." So just a little tip when you request stuff from Taonga, because you can. That's for your whānau, your hapu, your marae, your iwi. Then you become kaitiaki, and then we don't charge. So it's a little tip. I'll probably get in trouble at work for this, but it's important, you know. We want to get this. We want to get these back to the whānau. So. Just have to have some internal conversations and figure it out. But yeah, just watch the space, and yeah, and definitely keen to do this again with other taonga. You know, just listening to Annabelle and Shannon and Tanya was awesome. You know, and just makes me want to get up and go to work again tomorrow morning and find some more stuff. But yeah, it's a real privilege, you know, and yeah, so mi atu kia koutou.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe, Paul. Thank you. Well, te whānau, we are coming to slowly to the end of our Puna Kōrero, but I want to pātai that I want to ask each of you, actually, before we wrap up. And I'll start with you, Shannon. And the pātai is, what do you think are some of the important lessons that we can take away from the documentary and the wisdom shared by our tūpuna?
I think aroha for one another is something that we can take away from that documentary. You know, we've talked about those people that were in that documentary, and from my perspective, growing up around all of them, they all portrayed that in some way, shape or form, especially up on the marae. They dedicated themselves to serving our people, and like's already been said, I think that had a huge influence on me and why I do some of the things I do. Sometimes I wonder to myself why I do the things that I do at the marae, but I always think about the likes of my grandparents, Uncle Loti, Uncle Bolly, and all the dedicated people we had in those times that served our marae. And like I said before, I think I was lucky. I was lucky to actually have been brought up around people like that, role models, people that showed inspiration, the likes of myself, and I feel it's an honour and a privilege to be able to serve our people. The marae needs to be run, obviously, but it's the people that is most important, and that's what I always think about when I do mahi at the marae. I think about the people that came before me, and my goal up the marae is always that hopefully that I leave the marae in better stead than how I received it, I suppose. So yeah, I'll leave it there with you tonight. Whānau, kia ora tātou.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe, Shane. Thank you. Thank you for that, bro. And for you, Whai Annabelle, same pātai, what do you think are some important lessons we can take from the documentary and some wisdom shared from our tūpuna?
I think it would be whakapono tūmana ko te mea nui, ko te aroha. So they had belief, they had faith, and they had the aroha to move their moemoea to the future, to where we are now. And such a privilege to see what they did then. And I know that what our people are doing now, they're in similar positions, and I know that we look to the past to help us prepare for the future and make our future stronger for our tamariki and our mokopuna. So, ngā mihi nui ki a tātou katoa.
Kia ora, Whai. Tēnā koe. Tēnā koe. And finally, Tania, same pātai, what do you think are some of the important lessons we took from the documentary and some wisdom shared by our tūpuna?
I guess I think about the matariki theme, and I think about sowing seeds, the seeds that they sow, and the seeds that we will sow in our lifetimes, and how everything is connected up. So, they have affected all of us in the way that we are and who we are. And you don't really realise it at the time, that until you look back and you go, actually, a lot of who I am is impacted by people like that, and having known them and having been around them. And they live on in their descendants, and they live on through their deeds and their mahi and their memories and so forth. And so we're all connected that way. So, I think they teach us that we are part of that whole process. We're connected to them, and our descendants will be connected to us and to them. And so, we just see ourselves as part of that journey. So I take great heart from what it is that they were talking about and what they were doing, and what has happened as a result of what they've done, and likewise look forward to seeing how things continue on as a legacy of their deeds.
Kia ora. Kia ora, tēnā koe, Tania. Thank you for that. And finally, Paul, we'll leave the last word up to you. Any final comments from you, or any last words before we wrap up?
Yeah, just a privilege. I mean, just listening to Tanya, Annabelle, and Shannon. Actually, Shannon does remind you of his grandfather, doesn't he? Just like, even just the way he speaks, and his, so you're right there. It's followed through into the Tanya into other generations, I just clicked Annabelle, Adrian's your brother. I was at uni with Adrian, so. But yeah, they're just real privilege, and we're really keen to do more with Manipoto FM and make sure that it's not just us watching these taonga, but the iwi that are actually watching these taonga. And yes, I'll be working on getting copies and making sure others can watch the Te Kūititanga narrowing. And also keen to help, particularly the whānau, facilitate access to those unedited interviews in the Turnbull Library. So if you just want to message me, there's about 25 interviews. Shannon, there'll be your grandfather's one of them too. So if you just message me through Facebook, we can work on that.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe te rangatira e pō. O tira kia koutou katoa e ngā whanaunga. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. I'm really privileged to be amongst you all and sharing your guys' memories, taking us all down our memory lane and giving us the insights to you and your whānau's world as well. So, e mihi ana kia koutou katoa. Paul, thank you again on behalf of MFM and the iwi as well for giving us all this opportunity to view these taonga, and thank you and your team for looking after these beautiful taonga for us all to enjoy. We're looking forward to those today in the future. Tēnā tātou katoa e te whara. E mihi ana kia koutou. Thank you very much. Well, whānau, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did this evening, taking a glimpse of what it was like back in the days, and also just rewinding a week back and having a look at what our documentary Te Kūititanga the Narrowing looked like behind the scenes as well. But thank you to everyone that viewed in on our MFM platforms, YouTube, Twitter, and on our Facebook page as well. And thank you to those who left those beautiful comments, reactions, and those partais as well. Well, that's it for me, te whānau. I hope you all have a great night and a great rest of your week. Please stay safe and keep it locked on MFM, and we'll keep you up to date with everything that comes our way. Ōrere te whānau, ka nui te mihi, Pō Mārie.